We're going to walk you through 5 steps to 5K. Now, the first step is mindset and self-sabotage. You having the appropriate mindset and you being aware of self-sabotage. This is so key because in the past, before I understood this, I would just teach people what to do. Because people will say, I just need to know what to do. And so I tell them what to do. They wouldn't do it. I just need to know what to do. I tell them what to do. They wouldn't do it. They would find something else that they needed to do, but didn't know how to do. I tell them how to do that too. They still wouldn't do it. And so what I learned is that this will sound strange. It'll sound weird, but I'm telling you, 20 years of coaching people, I have learned, especially for the person that doesn't have results, it's more important to tell them why they won't do it versus what to actually do. Because if they can break through, if they can open their eyes to why they haven't been doing a thing, you're much more likely that with that awareness, that you're going to be able to actually do something. And so self-sabotage is real. One of the keys is for you to dive into and see yourself living that life that you've been claiming that you want. Okay. So you've been claiming that you want financial freedom. You've been claiming that you want to be a top earner. You've been claiming that you want to have all your debt paid off. You've been claiming that you want to have more than enough, abundance, prosperity. You've been claiming that you want that. But if there's a piece of your life that would actually make you feel bad getting that, you'll sabotage. And we see this all the time. So there was a lady that I coached in the 1K challenge, and very smart. You could tell she was just capable, smart. And she says, I know what to do. I just don't do it. Okay. How many get that? How many know what to do? You just won't do it. You just won't do it. Won't do it. And so there's a reason for that. It's not that you're lazy. And so I started digging around. So I'm like, okay, is this from her parents? So I kind of played with that a little bit, and then I'd pray. I played with this and I prayed. And then it centered, I got something about her husband. And then she said something. And she goes, yeah, my husband always says, hey, go have a good time, but don't spend any money. And that stood out like that. My spirit kind of jumped at that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. Tell me more about that. And she's like, well, when I got my first check as a teacher, he cashed it and gave me $20 from it. I think I know what your problem is. So in that scenario, there was a piece of her that decided, well, if he's going to really control it, then I just won't make any. That'll teach him, because that actually was a marriage survival scenario of honoring the marriage. But man, he keep taking, if I go and I make money, he keep taking my money, we're going to have a problem. So for the marriage survival, she decided, I'm just not going to make money. A subconscious. Now it's consciously, she never said that, but she made a decision of, if he's going to control the money, I'm just not going to make any. That's how I feel. That's what I'm going to do. And so what's the answer? The answer is to trust in the Lord, to have tougher conversations, to have conversations that move things, to not suppress. I feel so upset that he controls the money, to not suppress that, but to actually trust in the Lord to cover that conversation. Listen, I've had some very tough conversations with my wife, my mom. I've had tough conversations, but in prayer, I got it needed to happen. See, God doesn't want you scared. He doesn't want you scared. He wants you powerful, upright, righteous. He wants you unafraid. He wants you to walk in the new creation. But the things that we're afraid to address, ends up owning us and preventing us from abundance, from impacting more people, from living a more purpose-filled life. Does this make sense? And so what I found is just so important is, what is the self-sabotage? I'm going to give you a quick rundown because we got a lot more to cover. Okay. I could spend 8 hours on this one topic and it still wouldn't cover every scenario, but let's just cover some common ones. Okay. Number one, if you had parents that made a bunch of money and then they lost it, it's very likely that there's a part of you, especially on your age, right? Especially if it was like, between 6 to like 11, like that, very, very, very likely that if you had parents that made a bunch of money and lost it, that you created a program in your head, either an act, an agreement, a side agreement, a stronghold, or a belief, right? That you created something in your head that said, hey, if I make a bunch of money, I'm just going to lose it and I'm going to be embarrassed and shamed. So I'm just not going to make a bunch of money. So your past doesn't dictate your future, but we act like it does. And your body and your mind actually acts like this protective mechanism. And so let's protect them from further harm. So they'll protect you. Okay. We protect you. And so if you had parents that made a bunch of money and they ignored you, very likely that you're like, you know what, if you make a bunch of money, you got to ignore people. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like I felt. So I'm just not going to make money. If you had parents who were really hardworking, I see this a lot in people whose parents were immigrants. You had parents that really worked hard, but never made much money, never reached their dreams, always struggled. Then you may actually be allergic to financial freedom, because why should you have it and they didn't? Why should your life be easy and theirs weren't? Because there's a piece of you that really admires them. That's quite honoring, right? But you're like, well, how come why should I? So I've seen it where people start building residual income. Okay. They start building residual income and they actually sabotage it because their life becomes easier. And they're like, well, who am I to have an easier life than my parents? We could talk on this so many times. There's so much we could go here. Okay. And so mindset and self-sabotage, that is step number one. That is step one. Most of the time. Now, I'm not saying you can't figure it out on your own. Most of the time you're going to need help with that, because it's kind of like that. Think about like an AI bot that doesn't want you to find the turn off button, right? Like HAL. Think of HAL. For those of you who've seen 2001 Space Odyssey, but 2001 Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, HAL, right? What are you doing, Dave? Right? Has anyone seen that 2001 Space Odyssey? I know some of you have. Okay. Some of my millennials are like, what is he talking about? But 2001 Space Odyssey, right? HAL was creepy, right? Your programs, your agreements, your side agreements, your contracts, your strongholds, your acts, they are trying to protect you, but they are all limiting. They're all limiting. And so you trying to figure out your acts, your programs, your beliefs, your strongholds, especially those, you trying to figure out your agreement, your side agreements, you trying to figure that stuff out on your own. I'm not saying it's impossible, but man, does that require some real dissection. That requires a very particular type of person. And I'll just say it, I couldn't do it. I had to have help. Now, some of them I did figure out on my own, but most of those things I actually needed help to figure those out. Okay. That's step number one. You want to make your next or first, especially your first $5,000. You got to figure out, why aren't you doing the work? You know what work to do. No one's on here and I go, oh, no idea. Talk to humans. I never heard that. Right. Do marketing of what? Right. You know what to do. You may not be doing it in excellence. Right. 3 of the 5 steps will talk about excellence. You may not be doing it in excellence, but you know what to do. But why aren't you doing it? You figure that out. You're going to unlock a lot of results. Okay. So that's number one.